By the mid-2010s, it seemed as though zombie fatigue had really kicked in. Satirical movies like The Cabin in the Woods, Shaun of the Dead and Zombieland had poked fun at the tropes of this well-worn subgenre. Audience ratings for The Walking Dead were beginning to drop. The few smart and original zombie movies like Pontypool and The Girl with All the Gifts weren't commercially successful. It was becoming increasingly apparent that audiences had simply had enough of zombies. But then, two movies came along, one from Japan, the other from Korea, and proved that maybe zombie movies still have the power to entertain us, to thrill us, to surprise us. One was an ultra-low-budget satire about the making of an ultra-low-budget zombie movie. The other was an entirely earnest, completely formulaic zombie outbreak movie, one that, in theory, we had seen 1,000 times before. But it was so packed with visceral scares, emotional character beats, high-octane tension. It was so well-directed and well-executed that audiences all around the world embraced it, proving that maybe there's still life in the zombie movie after all. Join me as we conclude our journey through the evolution of the zombie movie, and we discuss Train to Busan and One Cut of the Dead. Welcome back to the evolution of horror. My name is Mike, and as ever, I am your host. If you're joining us for the first time, then you've joined us right at the end. Welcome. In this podcast, we explore and dissect the evolution of the horror genre by looking at particular subgenres across several weeks. We are reaching the end of our journey through the evolution of the zombie movie. This is part 22, in which we're giving you our final two in-depth discussions. Train to Busan from 2016 and One Cut of the Dead from 2017, or 2019 if you're going from UK release dates. These will both be spoilerific reviews. If you haven't seen these two movies, please do go away and watch them, especially One Cut of the Dead. I think part of the joy of One Cut of the Dead is the surprises and the twists, so I would urge people to seek out that movie before listening to our discussion. So we've got so much to discuss. We're going to get started very shortly. Just a quick announcement to say that, of course, this means we are at the end of our zombie series, which means that there is going to be a break and there will be no new episodes throughout the summer. There may be the odd little bonus one here and there, but the next proper subgenre series will not be starting until October 2019. We will be back with the next series, Series 5, in the run-up to Halloween. If you want to know what that series is, I have revealed it on social media, so you can follow us on Twitter at EvolutionPod, or on Instagram at Evolution of Horror, or facebook.com/Evolution of Horror, and you will be able to find out what the next subgenre is that we will be exploring. However, have no fear, because if you are a Patreon subscriber, you will continue to receive new episodes every single week, all the way through the summer hiatus. My plan is basically to bring you a whole bunch of reviews of movies from subgenres that we've already explored. So, for example, some of the slasher movies that we didn't quite get into during our slasher series. One episode is going to be an in-depth review of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, and A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. There'll also be another episode in which we discuss Psycho 2, what a movie, and another episode in which we're going to look and discuss every single movie in the Child's Play franchise. That's 7 Chucky movies and the new one. So I've got loads of exciting things to cover over the summer. So although there won't be much content coming out on the main podcast until October, if you subscribe to our Patreon page, you will be able to continue listening to in-depth discussions of horror movies every single week. If you want to get involved, simply go to patreon.com/Evolution of Horror and sign up now. Okay, let's get into our final two discussions then. Joining me for these two movies, I've got a brand new guest. This is the first time he's actually been on the main podcast. If you've ever been to our website, evolutionofhorror.com, you will have seen this guy's work. It is my great pleasure to welcome Mike Lee Graham.
Hi!
Hello.
Hey Mike, how's it going?
Very good, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm very excited to talk zombies with you today.
I know, can't wait. So excited. Such good films to discuss. First of all, just for people, because you've been on a couple of Patreon episodes, but you've not been on the main series. So tell us a bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
I am an illustrator and comic artist. I've done some of the illustrations on your website.
So good.
So some people will probably have seen my work.
Some people probably own T-shirts with your work on it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, thanks for buying those, everyone.
Yeah.
I guess, probably the thing that I'm most well known for is I'm the illustrator for a horror comic called Our Final Halloween, which has been, obviously fantastic to work on.
Amazing. Where can people sort of easily access that or read it or get hold of it?
We're going to do a Kickstarter for the paper version, proper a physical version of it in a couple of months, I think. So just follow me and the writer on social media and things like that. Will that be in the footnotes? I don't know.
We'll put it in the notes. Exactly.
It'll go in the notes.
Yeah, we'll put the links. Tell us, what is it about? What can you tell us about the story?
So it's I really used to have this down well.
Yeah.
5 teenagers wake up in an abandoned house, covered in blood, and have no recollection of what's happened to them for the past 24 hours or so. And it's basically like a mystery of finding out what the fuck happened, what are they doing in that house, and how to escape as well.
Wow.
Yeah, it's good.
Amazing.
It's good, and I did all the artwork and the colours, and a lot of people talk about how good the colours are. But,
mate. Well, all of your artwork is absolutely stunning. I love it so much.
Thank you very much.
I mean, I am biased because you did all my website and everything. But,
you might be biased.
No, but it's fantastic. Amazing. So we're talking all about we've finally reached the end of our sort of zombie series journey here with 2 sort of super sort of recent movies. But before we get into those, what are your thoughts on zombie movies in general? Are you a fan?
My favourite example of zombies has always been in video games. My introduction to zombies was Resident Evil, the video game series.
Yeah.
So that has always been. I think I've always really kind of gravitated towards more kind of video gamey kind of films, which is perfect with what we're talking about today.
Totally.
Resident Evil I just thought was great because one of the best things about Resident Evil was the zombies in it would kind of progress and evolve.
Right.
And I love the idea of if there's this virus that can do this to people, what else can it do?
Yes.
And they always tapped into that in Resident Evil.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I think it's you've got to find some way to add something new to the zombies. I think, haven't you? Like a few weeks ago, we talked about the girl with all the gifts, and it feels like this. In some ways, is the direction we've got ahead now with zombie stories, where they've got to do something new or evolve in some way, haven't they? Yeah.
There's only so many times I can see a film where the real problem was man all along. You know what I mean? I've seen that quite a lot now.
Yes. It's true. Interesting. Are you a big? What do you think of the Resident Evil films? Did you like the films?
I've got a little soft spot for them. I always find Mila Jovovich super charismatic. I think she's great. If I was a director and if my husband was a director and I was an actor, I'd be like, yeah, fuck it, I'll be in your films. People always kind of I don't know, people kind of don't seem quite snide against.
They are snide against
that sort of dynamic, but I think well, why wouldn't you?
Why not?
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
totally.
It's obvious that people have so much fun making those films. So who am I to rain on their parade?
Totally. Absolutely. Love it. Amazing. Cool. So we are going to get into talking about these 2 amazing movies. It feels a little bit like I wanted to end with these 2 partly because it feels like Asian cinema, maybe they've got the key to the future of zombies in some way. I mean, it feels like that talking about these 2 movies. I mean, just in general, before we get into these 2, are you a big fan of Asian cinema, of Asian horror, Japanese, Korean, that kind of stuff?
It's my favorite.
Is it?
Yes, it is my favorite. Also, out of Asian cinema has come some of the most amazing ghost stories.
Oh my god!
Like truly amazing.
They know how to do scary.
They
ghost stories.
really do, and they also know how to do really sad movies as well. They really understand. I don't know if it's like a cultural thing or something, but there's like seems to be a real respect and kind of reverence for kind of like the spirits and things like that. Also, like there have been some, again, to bring it back to video games, some of the video games that have come from Japan in terms of Japan, specifically. Games like Silent Hill, just the kind of. I mean, it's so different to what we've got over here in the West in terms of like how we kind of approach those things.
Yeah, totally. We talked about this a bit with when we talked about J-horror and also Onibaba and films like that. Like they, what I love about them is that they just don't. They're not structured like Western movies. Tonally, they're nothing like Western movies. They do their own thing, and it's so refreshing sometimes, because I feel like when I sit down to watch a movie like this, you never quite know where you sit with it and where it's going to go emotionally, where it's going to take you, and all of that kind of thing.
Exactly, and they're not interested in jump scares.
No,
as a result, they're so creative with some of the kind of storylines and things like that. Well, I can't remember who directed it, but The Wailing that's probably one of my favourite horror films in like the last decade or something.
It's like a proper epic.
It is. I don't think I've seen too many horror epics.
I know. A movie that goes from, I mean, that has a zombie element to it.
It does, yeah.
Kind of viral outbreak into folk horror, into ghosts, into, it's got everything, hasn't it?
It really
It's
does.
absolutely
It really,
amazing.
really does.
Have you seen any of the old stuff, like Kwaidan and those types of movies?
I actually watched Kwaidan last week, and I loved it.
Right, another epic.
Like the background designs in that film are amazing.
Just
the lighting
stunning.
in it, it's one of the most visually like affecting films I've seen. Yeah,
awesome. All right, well, let's get into our first film then, which is Train to Busan.
부산으로 가는 KTX 406 열차가 곧 출발합니다.
저기요, 이상한 사람이 하나 타고 있는 것 같은데.
팀장님, 여기 11호차 응급 환자 발생했습니다.
꼼짝으로 착각했어? 알려주세요.
Our main character is a dad who values his work more than his daughter, I suppose, and his family. And the shit hits the fan majorly when there is a zombie outbreak in Seoul, I'm guessing, yeah. They only found out about this after the fact when they're on the train. And unfortunately, one rogue passenger has managed to make it on who is infected. And they start infecting other people on the train. And it's about, okay, who do we team up with?
Yeah.
How do we get from here to Busan, where the train is going, and how do we survive? And it is just a literal roller coaster.
It is. You're so right. And it's so brilliant because it's just like a beautifully simple setup. And it feels like that happens within about 10 minutes. It's like this infected passenger jumps onto the train, the doors close and the train starts moving. And it's like, here we go. 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's do this.
It's got the same sort of trajectory as Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, right, exposition, dump, done. Are we all up to speed?
Yeah.
Fine.
Let's
go.
do this. Yeah. So, what do you think of this movie?
I saw it when it came out in the cinema a couple of years ago, and I liked it. I really liked it. I watched it last night, and I loved it.
Yeah. I've had the exact same experience as you. I watched it at Fright Fest for the first time. I think that was 2015 maybe, or 2016. And I really, really liked it. Obviously at Fright Fest, that's a pretty good film for Fright Fest standards. Not to sort of not to slag off Fright Fest, but a lot of the time they're much smaller, cheaper, low budget horror films.
Sure.
This was big, epic,
really was.
Stunts and locations, and it looks beautiful. So it was a real roller coaster ride at Fright Fest and great fun. But also maybe because it was in amongst those hundreds of other films I'd seen, it kind of almost blended into the others, and I've always been fond of it. But watching it again last night for this, I was actually like, wow, this is fucking incredible, this movie. It really is.
It's quite, I don't want to say generic, but
it's by the book. It's zombie by the numbers in some ways.
It is. And I think the first time I watched it, I think that's kind of how I took it at quite surface value. But watching it again, you kind of realise, like, oh my God, this works on every single level narratively. Like, it's just coming together so well.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is so satisfying.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yes. There's so much I want to talk about. And I think part of the reason that it works so well is the characters, is the human element behind it. And, we talked about this for months now about zombies. They are often, the humans are more important than the zombies, of course. But what zombie movies tend to be is a bunch of really horrible people who hate each other and bicker and fight. And this has that too, but it also has the good side of humanity. That's what I kind of love about it as well, that these are really likable, if not lovable characters. And
immediately as well.
Yeah, immediately. And it packs an emotional punch in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, it works so. I think a big crux of the film is kind of asking the audience, do you want to be selfish, or do you want to be the kind of person that helps other people?
Do you need to be more like that little girl?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, the little girl. I mean, I need to find her name, the actress, but I just think
fantastic.
It's one of the best child performances I've ever seen.
She is brilliant. I mean, are we in spoilers yet?
We'll go full spoilers from the start.
Yeah. I mean, her. At the start, when you see her doing her little song on the video camera, and then at the end when she starts singing again, it just I thought I was actually quite together for the film, but when she starts singing at the end, I was like, oh, here it comes.
I watched it with Rihanna last night. She'd never seen it, and she was very reluctant to begin with, another zombie film. Okay, I'll watch a bit of it with you and then go to bed. She sat through the whole thing. She was crying, so into it, but it's so fucking sad. Soo-Ann Kim, who is the little girl in the film, she's absolutely brilliant. Incredible, and she has to do a lot of crying all the way through it. It feels like from the start she's miserable because of her relationship with her dad, and it's her birthday, and it's it's so heartbreaking.
Yeah, of course.
And then of course that just gut-wrenching moment at the end when her dad sort of sacrifices himself is just and it's not often that horror films can make you cry. That's the thing.
No. It I think it was really pushing into melodrama at some point, but when you're along for that ride, when it gets you,
if you're in it
really works.
It's true. And like we mentioned, I think you do get this with Asian cinema sometimes, that sometimes if you're not in it, and if you're not going with it, it can come across as a bit melodramatic. Some of the acting style, it's just different to American cinema. But my God, it works 10 times better, I think, if you're invested and if you're in it.
This film, I just couldn't believe how much I liked all the characters that quickly.
Yeah.
It does such a good job of it just pans through the train, and you just get to meet the sisters, you meet the teenagers that are on the baseball team. You spend a little bit of time with the stewards, I guess.
Yes. One of them kind of fancies the other one. You get a very small hint of that at the beginning.
There's such subtle little kind of introductions to these characters, but all of a sudden you're just like, well, I don't want anything bad to happen to any of them.
Yeah, it's great.
I hope they just get to their destination and they find the army and it's all fine.
I know. It's so true. And of course, the incredible couple, the pregnant lady and her husband, who steal it, don't they? They absolutely are incredible,
mate. I could just if there's a prequel, and it's just like a rom-com.
Yes, I know.
And it's just those two. I'm in.
And he again he starts off as what I thought was going to be this kind of comedy character, I suppose, this kind of schlubby comic relief almost. And he's not. He's the hero. He is the actual hero, and he's
Superman.
And I love how he calls out our actual quote-unquote hero an arsehole from beginning to end, which he is. And he just kind of tells it like it is, and he's always trying to help everybody, and it's just so brilliant. And I think that's what really gets me from the beginning of this film, is just how much you love you're rooting for all of these characters.
It's so easy to root for them. Yeah. They've all, it's what a charismatic cast.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is zombies are so... as as a kind of. It's not like they're like Jason or Freddy,
No.
or do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
They're pretty generic.
They are. They're kind of like we've said quite a lot. They're kind of like blank slates, right?
Yeah. There's not a huge amount of personality, so it's so important for the key players to have oodles of it.
Yeah,
and
you have to rely on that. Yeah,
honestly, it's like the moments that they get to have. The comic relief moments and the moments where they actually have genuine kind of heart-to-heart moments together, and just the way that it's structured, it works so well in that, okay, they're not going to have, there's an action scene here because they've got to get from one end of the train to the other, but then in between they're going to have a little breather because that's exactly what you do.
Of course, yeah, of course. It's brilliant, and that works narratively and it works structurally for the film. I think what's really lovely about it is that it's 2 hours. That's quite long for a zombie film, but it's paced so well, I think, between these kind of moments of real high octane edge of your seat action and horror, and then moments of just sort of character stuff of kind of chilling out, I suppose. These kind of beats where everyone can take a breather for a minute. It really works.
I think the best decision in that film is that they stop at the first stop, don't they?
Yes.
And it gives them an opportunity to, one, see just how bad it's gotten.
Yes.
And two, for them to be split up finally.
Yes.
And that's when, that's the best stuff, because then it's like, oh God, I've got to get to my daughter, I've got to get to my wife.
Yes.
We have to go through.
Yes.
We've got to go through these like 6 carriages.
Yes.
We have to do this.
Exactly.
And it's like all the motivations are so spot on.
It's so brilliant.
Yeah.
It's so brilliant. It reminds me, going back a little bit, the setup of kind of meeting all these characters, it all being set, it reminds me almost as well of a kind of like a disaster movie or a action movie, but those sorts of things, Poseidon Adventure or Speed, where they're all stuck on the bus, those types of sort of setups. Actually, I mean, I was thinking this last night. I don't know why trains specifically seem to work so well cinematically, but there are so many brilliant movies throughout history set on trains, like albeit murder mysteries or dramas or horrors or action movies, sci-fis. There is so much. I mean, Snowpiercer has finally been released in the UK on Netflix. It, for some reason, just never got a distributor and got a release here, even though it was made in sort of 7 years ago, wasn't it? But again, what a fascinating idea and concept Snowpiercer is as well. And, just what is it about trains, do you think, that works so well narratively?
I think it works in the same way that the Raid and Dread work in buildings, where it's like, okay, we're here, we've got to go there.
Yes.
It's
literally streamlined.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that, and it's so... You can escalate it as much and as little as you want. Mm-hmm. So the first kind of carriage that they need to get through, it's just got a couple of zombies. So it's like, okay, we don't need to overthink this. Yeah. We'll just beat them up.
Yes.
And then the second one is like, oh God, there's a few of them now. All right, how are we going to get through here? And then the third one's just like chock-a-block. Yeah. And it's like, all right, God, we really need to over. And it's like, it's that wonderful escalation of threat and how do we deal with this, and it's done creatively as well. There's not just them, no one gets their hands on a gun or anything like that. It's like they've got to be so,
you've got to use what you've got on the train.
And it's like one of my favorite things about it is how each character's sort of predisposed role in society is kind of what their strength is.
Right.
It's like the kid with the baseball bat. He smashes through one of the windows because he's young, he's got energy, and he's angry as well. He's just like, he just keeps on going, and it's like, oh fuck, he's in. And then
exactly.
It's like the guy, the hedge fund manager, the kind of the white collar guy, who's kind of got like, all right, I know how to use technology, so I'm going to use. But then obviously you've got the sort of the dad, the husband, who's just like a tank, and like, well, I mean,
brute.
To be honest, he could have just done it all.
Exactly.
I think they overthought a lot of it.
Yeah, he could have been like the Sly Stallone of this movie, couldn't he? Yeah, no, you're so right. I love that about it. I love that all of these characters, play to their own strengths. Yes. And I love that it's, I think that's exactly what it is. It's the train thing. It gives you a kind of a beautiful, simple kind of A to B of a storyline almost, doesn't it? Same as Snowpiercer, which essentially is you've got to get from the back carriage to the front one, isn't it? Snowpiercer. Yes. And you're right, tower block movies have that same kind of thing. And, interestingly, we were just talking about video games. I mean, this feels like, to me, there's a very video gamey element to it, right? Because of that thing you just said of like, trying to work out how we can do this. It's almost like mission statements or something, right?
It's like you can't beat one character unless you have all of the items.
Yes,
It's
yes.
like, oh God, I've got to go back and pick up the other phone.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I can't do that trick.
Yes, exactly. Like you said before we start recording, you've got what are you going to do? You've got newspaper and you've got a bottle of water. You can use it to cover a window and therefore
Will you
stop the
combine
zombies.
with window?
Yeah. It's such a good point though. It's so true, and there's something really kind of satisfying it makes it a very satisfying watch to watch people do this.
It's the first film that kind of, just because of the way the zombies act in this, the film that comes to mind to compare it to is not 28 Days Later, but World War Z.
Yeah, definitely World War Z. Yes.
Which was much I quite enjoyed like that last sort of bit when they're in like a lab or something.
Where they're in Wales.
This is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But like all that CGI and stuff, when the zombies turn into like ants and they're like basically crawling all over each other and stuff, it's like it has no impact unless the stakes are right and you care about the characters and things like that.
Yes.
There was so much, like the zombies were so much less rabid in this film, I suppose, but they seemed so much more dangerous because it was all
totally.
They were
so
all claustrophobic. Exactly. Yeah.
I think you're so right. That's the problem with World War Z. There are lots of problems, but the idea of
the producers.
I know. The idea of like zombies being exciting, but just seeing it from like a helicopter above it just doesn't work. The point is, there is no. It feels like there's no threat to zombies unless you're trapped somewhere with them or you're in the thick of it. That's the thing.
I don't understand some of the choices that get made because, no one. One of those kind of helicopter shots. It's not like that. That doesn't. I'm away from the action.
Yes.
I'm not.
Yes.
I'm not interested.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Exactly. And yes, you get some good spectacle, although a lot of CGI spectacle. But other than that,
care about it anymore.
Other than that, it doesn't really affect it. And whereas, you're right. I think this is quite similar to World War Z. It almost is like a fixed version of it. You've got this incredible large-scale apocalypse going on, but it's just so well. Again, it's so well paced. It's so well sort of realised. I think
it works on every single like sort of storytelling level.
Yeah.
It's like it works just as an action film, action horror film.
Yeah,
it really does. It's like really fast. It's well paced, and then it also works as like a sort of a character drama.
Yeah,
because
100%.
like everyone has their moment, everyone learns a little something, and also it works as kind of like in the subtext. Like there's so much like subtext about society and things like that, and the hierarchies that exist.
Yes.
One complaint I've got. It's not really a complaint necessarily, but it's like I kind of would have liked to have seen the homeless guy get the CEO.
Yes.
That I thought would have been quite nice because
you're right. The CEO didn't get the death he deserved as well. I was quite upset about that because usually in most zombie movies, that character will get the death where he's ripped apart. And I was waiting for that the whole time because I'd forgotten what had happened to him. What a horrible, hateful character he is. And that's the thing. Like, despite what we just said about it having so many lovable characters, it's also got some great baddies too as well.
Yes.
Which it absolutely needs. But I think the most important thing is you can see why that villain is doing what he's doing. Definitely. And I think like every character is actually quite smart. Every character kind of does the thing that you would think to do for the most part, which also makes it a very satisfying watch. I think.
There's no moments where it's like, don't go in there.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck are you doing? There's no horror movie logic. No. Everyone's getting through because they are relying on their own skill set.
Yes.
And, to bring it back to like the sort of video game thing again, I could see myself scrolling through the characters. This guy's quicker.
Yeah, you're right. This one's stronger. This one's quicker. This one's got a bat. Again, watching it with Rihanna, there was a moment when they stopped on the train at that first station, and she's like, well, obviously everyone gets off. Like, why on earth would you choose to get back on this train? Like, why is the film called Train to Busan? Surely you wouldn't stay on this train. But obviously when they get off, they see how much worse it is at that station, and yes, of course you want to then get back on the train. That's the thing. It kind of everything makes sense every beat, I think, in this story.
100%.
Yeah.
I guess another sort of small complaint that I've got is obviously the teenage girl in it is great because she has like her kind of big moment is when the CEO guy is kind of telling. I mean, that whole scene was made me feel
get to that,
so
it's just brilliant.
horrible.
Yeah.
Just about like, oh god, this is what it's like, isn't it? This is just what it's like. This young person's trying to tell us like not to do this, and everyone just doesn't like. It's the amount of people that kind of just looked away from them when they were getting. But she was fantastic in it. But I would like to maybe have seen one more woman character have a bit more agency.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
because there's and you know, not to knock. I don't want to knock like how great the guy characters are in it because they're very heroic and they have really great moments. But I kind of felt like you know, obviously you've got the wife who is pregnant. It's like fair enough. Okay, she needs to be protected.
But she is literally just kind of carried and protected the whole way through.
Literally at moments.
Yes, exactly.
Obviously, it's fantastic that they survive.
Yes.
Which is, I think, what it's made me kind of think that maybe the movie isn't kind of talking about how society should be, but it's like how society is as it is currently. Because like the first guy to go is the most masculine. As well, and it's that kind of idea of like the expendable man. Which is like, you know, and it's like he's the most like heroic version of that kind of character. He was fantastic.
Absolutely. And I do think as well, and the counter argument to this is that the daughter, the little girl, is the smartest and most kind of emotionally mature character in the film almost.
100%.
You know, like she kind of is the one that feels like turns some of the other characters into better people in some ways, you know, which I love.
You know what? You are 100% correct.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
Right, yeah.
But I think you're right in general, though, about some of the other characters. But I think that's a really interesting... And actually, that's another thing, you know, interestingly, we've said it, in some ways it can only be, the way that this is filmed, it isn't like a Hollywood movie, but it has elements of Hollywoodness to it as well. Yeah. And there's a real Spielberg heart to this, I think. The kind of, you know, the estranged father and the kid who don't really get on, but then they kind of learn to love each other at the end, and it will make you cry and warm your heart. That's a very Steven Spielberg thing, you know.
It is.
Tom Cruise as the bad dad in War of the Worlds, and Sam Neill in Jurassic Park, and every single movie basically Spielberg has made has got in some way some sort of estranged father or absent father or father who doesn't quite connect with his children or whatever. Again, maybe that's what makes this film so brilliant, is that it's got this really lovely kind of East meets West kind of vibe to it. Like, it kind of ticks all the boxes in some ways.
Definitely, yeah.
No,
I could talk about this movie.
Oh, it's amazing.
All
it's
day.
amazing.
It just seems to work all over the place.
Let's talk about the zombies themselves.
Yes.
Then. I mean, what is it? You know, are these your bog standard zombies? Is there anything unique about them, or is there anything new about them?
There's they've got a couple of like interesting fallbacks, like sort of like problems, as like, you know, with like they're kind of blind. There's something going on with their eyes where if it's dark, they just cannot see.
Yeah, I loved that about them. They're kind of the opposite of the monsters in The Descent. Like they can't function in the dark at all.
But they're I don't think they're like World War Z zombies where they're like, it's almost like they're superhuman. It's kind of like, okay, their muscles haven't atrophied.
Yeah,
and so it seems like they're not like super powered. They're like falling from great heights, but because they're kind of undead, they can push through that kind of...
You're right. They're kind of, there's something very like kind of like floppy about them.
Yeah,
like the way that their bones kind of twist back and contort.
Oh, that one guy that could put... I'm like, it's a trick. I've seen it. Someone could just put their arm behind their head, but it works fantastically in this film.
So good. And they are creepy. And again, there's this element of J-horror. There's this element of like... Sadako crawling up from a well or crawling out of the TV in the kind of jerkiness of the way some of them move when they are sort of contorted and on their back and crawling or something, you know.
They don't try and overshoot it.
Yes,
you know, and like the blood on their faces, they like I can't remember if I saw one zombie that had like decayed. They're all quite new zombies. They're pretty fresh.
Yes, they are. Yeah. They are, because it's literally happened. And this is another thing, is that they turn almost instantly. Yeah. So they get bitten, and it's like, that's it. You've got about 2 minutes to get away from them before they turn.
That's one of my favourite new tropes. I like the old, it's done. Like I'm turning it around. Like there's no, because also one of my least favorite things that happens in other zombie films is when someone gets bitten and they try and hide it.
Yes, classic.
Fucking,
and it goes on for hours.
Oh my god! And it's oh, I'm just ill.
Yeah. Really, it's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Don't look at my arm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. It's so quick. It's almost takes your breath away. Actually, the speed of this film, in terms of how quickly they seem to multiply on that train. Because again, it's another thing Rihanna said to me last night. Within 10 minutes of being on that train, it's like you've got like 100 of them, and it's like, and she was like, "Where does this film go now?" Like that's it. Yeah. They trap about 30 of him in a carriage, and already a bunch of people have been killed and infected within about 10 minutes of the train moving, and it's like, holy shit, how does this sustain its running time?
That is one of getting that level of threat in that quickly,
exactly,
because you're just you yourself watching it, you're like overrun, all of a sudden, and you just kind of think, well, this film's going to be over in about 5 minutes. What's going on?
And again it's a brilliantly thought out set of strengths and weaknesses these zombies have, because they are really fast, they are really savage. They can't open doors, which is amazing for the train, because it means that you can literally box them. It's a case of like, how do you get through each carriage and box them in as you go, right? Which we talked about, that brilliant video gamey idea of like,
so creative.
Or if we throw our phone the other direction, then we'll run that way, and then we can run the other way and shut the door or whatever.
It's so satisfying.
It's really satisfying. It's the world we keep coming back to. Yeah,
and it's the same sort of feeling you get from playing a game, and you figure it out.
Yes,
and it's like, oh, how do I get? Oh, this boss's knee is glowing.
Yes,
like I'll attack the knee. I figured it out. All right, that kind of stuff. It's really, really satisfying to get that right.
It's really cool. So I really I love the way that they move as well. Again, it's like it is like World War Z, but more interesting, more satisfying, the way that they almost move as like one creature, like the way they kind of crawl over each other and scramble on each other and climb on each other, and it's like this big like lump of matter just like moving its way across a train or something.
I was amazed at how realistic it was actually. I'd love to see, I need to see some behind the scenes of this. But there's a couple of shots where I kind of went, okay, it's a little ropey, little bit ropey there, but for the most part they kept those shots really short. And like one of my favorites was when they're all trying to get onto the train, like the little train at the end, and the dad was just kind of trying to boot their bloody hands.
That is an amazing sequence as well, because again, like they pile on each other so much that they actually start to slow down the train.
That was great. That was fantastic.
It's so clever. Things like that about it that they've thought up are so interesting and so clever.
One film that sort of came to mind in terms of just this really great escalation of problems versus where you are, versus what the zombies are doing, versus what people are doing, is Tremors.
Oh, yes.
Because they think that they've cracked it, and all of a sudden it turns out, okay, these worms are smart.
Yes. And that's it. Tremors, it's another one of those types of movies, like kind of disaster movies, monster movies, A Band of Survivors. It's that same kind of vibe, isn't it? That this has. Yeah. And I just love that it gives you every kind of scenario in the ways that, okay, how do they deal with doors? What about if all of them are piling onto one big glass door? Eventually they're going to go through it. The terrifying scene at the end when the train is kind of leant on its side, the train carriage, and the characters are stuck underneath it, and all of the zombies are literally on top of them on the window, about to fall through. It just visually looks so stunning, doesn't it? It's so good.
Well, the director did a lot of animation. That kind of strength of knowing how to use visuals, because there's a lot of show don't tell in this film,
and that's what we want, isn't it? In a film, that's what you want.
Exactly. Otherwise I just listen to radio dramas.
Yes, exactly.
I'm such a sucker for like telekinesis and things like that. And his latest film is called like Psychokinesis. And it's just a picture of a guy flying, and I was like, well, I'm in.
Amazing. And I think, again, we've touched upon it, but the cinematography and the look of this film, again, it's just so beautiful and artistically done. The lighting, those moments when the lights go out, and all of the visuals are just beautiful, aren't they?
It's like the best of what cinema kind of has to offer. It's like it's one of these films where it's like there's no way you could do this in any other medium. It respects the medium. It knows what it's doing, and I just know in my heart that everyone had a great time making this film. I just know that they did. You know, it's just such a satisfying, fun film to watch. Everyone has a moment as well.
Yes.
That's the great thing about it. Everyone has a moment.
It's true. Everyone has a moment to shine. You're so right. Let's talk about that, because the latter half is where it gets darker in terms of the human drama. So you're right. They get separated, and then it becomes this like. That's when the classic zombie like paranoia kicks in.
Yeah.
Suddenly there's one horrible character. The CEO doesn't want to let the other survivors in. Do the other people kind of follow him? Do they go against him? And all of those kind of horrible human dynamics build of kind of realizing that the human race is a horrible group of people. I mean, again, what did you think of like kind of that section of the film?
It just makes me it sucks the life out of me, that bit, honestly. And it's just and you know what's so horrible about it is I know it's so easy for that sort of thing to happen.
Yes.
As soon as one person takes charge, and they just start saying, "Hey, think about it, we can't let them in." And he's also got like his lackey, like the steward, he's obviously the kind of guy that needs someone to follow as well. And because he's like in a suit, it's like when he starts making decisions, everyone just starts to follow behind.
Exactly.
And it's that I can't remember her name, the teenager, the girl teenager, when she starts protesting, she's like she's like begging people, like, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? Like, think about this. And it's just, they just don't listen to her because obviously, this is probably mirrors reality quite well. Like, people probably wouldn't listen.
You're so right, actually, how it does mirror. It's a really interesting thing because you've got these kind of middle-aged people in suits who are trying to run everything. You've got this young girl who's not being listened to, and then you've got this older lady who is just like done with the world, who ultimately just goes fuck you all and opens the door and is like basically almost above it all, like over it, basically.
I think those two characters were kind of the key to the movie because they're sisters, and one of them was very kind, very open, and then the other sister was quite selfish. And so because the nice sister got turned into a zombie, she just like the selfish sister kind of goes, "Oh, I get it. Like you're always, oh god, you're always trying to be bloody nice. All right, I'll be nice. I'll be nasty to these people to be nice." Yeah,
exactly. It's so good. It works so well, and I love, and like you say, the horrible thing is that you can kind of believe it. Again, what it reminded me of at this point in the movie was The Mist, and that idea of people turning on people. That absolutely horrific character played by Marcia Gay Harden in that, who is just one of the scariest characters in horror, and that kind of horrible, selfish psychopath leader figure who everyone follows blindly, and it, it's this idea that like as soon as humans are stuck in a situation like this, they find somebody to just blindly follow and with absolute conviction, is terrifying.
It is so terrifying, and it's so true as well. And it's like I see scenes like that in movies, and I'm like, oh god, am I above that?
I know.
Am I above just following somebody blindly just because they seem like they've got their shit together a bit more? That kind of stuff. Really, like that's why that's all those things. That if a zombie apocalypse did happen, I'd just fucking off myself. I'd just let it happen. I'd just go.
I know, and it's so the main guy, the dad of the little girl. I mean, obviously he is a selfish character, and he's very selfish actually. But there are moments when you go, he's a real knobhead. But there are moments when you go, I can kind of see where you're coming from your perspective. When he's like, look, don't worry about everyone else. Let's just me and you make sure we survive, because he's just trying to make sure him too, but his daughter lives through this, and the daughter just cannot understand. Like she's like, what are you talking about? And it's really interesting.
It's that kind of the most society, like in society, the most important person on that train is the most cruel and mean, and then in society, I suppose the person that has like the least importance, like the small child that doesn't have a job or anything. Not that I obviously I don't agree with all that. They're very important, but it's kind of like the least to apparently offer is the most good. It's like going through these jobs and living this sort of life can like turn you into this like the sort of chasing kind of like success. It can turn you into this quite cruel, horrible monster.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because when you get given at work or school or whatever, like kind of fire drills and that kind of thing, usually you're told like just make sure you are okay, like kind of thing.
Yeah,
They always say kind of don't go back in for other people or any possessions or anything, like you just get yourself out of there kind of thing. It's almost kind of taught to us in society in some ways, just like this kind of every man for themselves kind of vibe, you know, which is
good.
bleak. Yeah.
I'm not saying I want to be like ants.
Yes.
Just sort of throwing myself at problems until it's fixed, you know, but like throwing myself onto fires and stuff like that. But God, it's horrible to have that mirror put up against you and just those. I mean, God, I remember this isn't a horror film, but what is it? Force Majeure. Where it's like,
what a film.
No, could I be like that?
Oh, what a film. Well, again, similar. That's a similar thing, similar situation. All of these types of movies are fascinating from just a kind of that sort of human psychology and sociology perspective.
And you know, with the Mist and Train to Busan, especially, it's like the characters are quite archetypal.
Yes.
And I know that people, I think we've been spoilt by like shows like we were talking about Breaking Bad earlier, and it's like the acting in that is so natural and things like that. But there's so much when you want to say something in a film, having archetypal characters is so important. Because they have to have the right kind of personalities to bounce off of each other. Because you're saying something with these characters. Yeah, you are. And it's done so well in Train to Busan.
You're right.
So well.
You're right, because I think they are archetypal, and in some ways they could come across as quite two-dimensional. Maybe it's just because they're performed so brilliantly and so likably.
They're all so different.
Yeah.
Their personalities are so specifically theirs.
Yes. I also love, we talked about this briefly, we talked about the zombie weaknesses, but one of my favourite set pieces is when they go through the 2-minute long tunnel. And you've got the 2-minute countdown almost of like, we've got to get from one end of the carriage to the other by crawling along that luggage shelf. Oh,
what a pain in the ass.
That is tension like I've never seen. I love a moment like that in a film. You know, like, I mean, this isn't that related, but in Scream 2, when they all have to crawl over the ghost face killer who they think may have been knocked unconscious in a car crash, and they have to crawl over him in order to get out, and they're not sure if he's awake or not. Moments like that in films, I love. Those kind of like tension, and at any moment something could snap and wake up.
Everyone shut the fuck up.
Yeah. You just kind of sit and hold your breath, basically, the whole time. So good.
It's when you can hear like them just sort of like breathing a bit, like the zombies as well, just making like doing their weird little movements and things like that. That scene was fantastic.
So good. There are so many highlights to talk about. Anything else? Any other highlights for you, or any standout moments?
Any other standout moments? Just the catharsis of the dad crying at the end, because I think there's like it tries to set it up a number of times that he's getting upset and he can't quite.
He nearly cries.
Like the dam won't break, and then when he gets bit and he locks his kid back in there, he locks them in there, and the kid's crying, and then he just walks out, and it's like it's ugly crying. He's like screaming,
sobbing.
He's sobbing, and it's beautiful.
And again, very melodramatic, and in some ways could have ended up being almost comedic, but just works.
There's a little bit of melodrama.
Works. Exactly, it is melodrama, but it works. It got me.
Yeah, it's just like, and like I would have thought. The first time I watched it, I thought it was a bit melodramatic.
Yes.
But when I watched it last night, I got very upset.
Yeah, me too.
I was on board. I was on board.
Me. So good. Do you know who is the other unsung hero of this film? Is the train driver.
Yeah.
What a legend. Yeah. What a legend. He just kind of gets on with it. He makes his little announcements. He's trying to help every step of the way. And he's completely on his own. It's like he doesn't interact with a single other character.
That is such a good point. It's like, I always sort of think about this with like pilots on planes as well. I always just sort of assume that like, he's got shit together.
Yes. Again, it's that thing like you said at the beginning of like everyone kind of playing to their role and playing to their strengths, and he's this like reliable, trustworthy guy. You know, he's running his train on time. He's keeping everyone updated. You know, it's brilliant. He's brilliant.
He's making time as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the outside shots of the train, he's bombing it.
Yes. I loved it. And you know, the sequence when he does suddenly realise the track there's a big obstruction and they have to change trains, and like that bit we talked about where the train carriage tumbles over. It's just like heart in your mouth again, isn't it?
You know, when I watched that yesterday, I thought to myself, when there's smoke and he starts. He just, you know what's great about that? He immediately slows down.
Yeah.
Because we're not in a stupid film where there's like people make these dumb decisions. In if this film gets remade in America,
Which it's gonna, I think, isn't it?
It must be.
Yeah.
It's been too popular. Is when that sequence happens, they're gonna almost crash into the. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's gonna be like,
Or they will like smash through it, and they'll just somehow still keep going.
It's like you're telling me that the driver just wouldn't stop.
Yeah. No, you're so right. You're so right. The inevitable American remake, which I'm sure will come. Yeah. Amazing. Any other thing we haven't mentioned? I think we've pretty much covered most of the elements of the film.
I just love it.
It's so good. It really is up there for me, actually, watching it again. I had the same experience as you watching it. I was like, wow, this is a pretty masterfully made zombie movie. You know, if you just want a really well done, it is traditional zombies, but just a really well done traditional zombie movie, it's amazing, right?
It's right up there.
Yeah, so good. And it is available on Netflix. It was either Netflix or Amazon Prime. Prime.
I think, did I watch it on Prime? Yeah, I watched it on Prime.
Amazon Prime, yeah, there you go.
I think I did.
Amazing. All right, let's move on to I would say a less conventional zombie movie in a lot of ways.
Very.
死の呪文を唱えるとそれはよみがえる。
それ
I'll attempt to do the story of One Cut of the Dead.
Please do it. Yeah.
How do you do the story of One Cut of the Dead? So essentially, it starts off. This is what's so brilliant about it. So it starts off with a woman being attacked by a zombie. Then we slightly zoom out and we see a director coming in and shouting at them. So actually, it's a film of a zombie attack, and the director is basically having a go at them both and telling them they're bad actors, and he's really giving this woman a hard time. But then we discover that this is actually part of another film, and this film... No, hang on.
It's tricky.
So the director has a go at her, gives her a hard time, but then these characters actually get attacked by real zombies. And this is all happening in the first 30 minutes of the film, and the first 30 minutes plays out as a single-take zombie movie about these filmmakers and actors who actually get attacked by real zombies. But it's a very bad zombie movie. Like, I think you can be forgiven for thinking, when you first start watching it, this is shit.
What the fuck am I watching
and
here?
I've heard stories about how people did walk out of the cinema in the first 30 minutes because they're like, this is trash, which is we'll come back to.
Yeah.
But then what it's revealed at the end of this long single take 30-minute low budget zombie movie is that this is a film within a film. So it was a film within a film within a film. It's like Inception. And it was actually a live television broadcast for a new channel called the Zombie Channel, and this sort of very kind of bless him, this director who describes himself as cheap, fast, and average has actually made. So at the end of this 30-minute live one-take broadcast, we then go back a month and we see the prep work and we see how this 30-minute film came to be. And then the last act, we actually see the whole thing again, but from a kind of more of a God's eye perspective, where we actually see everything that goes on behind the scenes and why certain elements of the film looked as kind of clunky and bad as they did because of all the work that went into it. I mean, that in itself it's a difficult plot to describe, and there's nothing else like it, really. What do you think of this movie?
I love this film. Honestly... the first time I watched it, I got so, especially by the end, I was so emotionally invested.
Right.
I watched it the day after with my missus, and I did not know how the fuck to explain what she was about to watch. I didn't know whether I'd give it all away.
Yeah.
Or if I told her nothing.
Yeah.
I did a sort of a halfway house.
Yeah.
And when she started watching it, she was just going, what the fuck am I?
Yeah, I know.
What the fuck
is
this?
It's
What have you got me watching it?
It's amazing, and I don't know whether this is to its credit or to its detriment that you have to stick it out in order to realise how brilliant it is. I don't know if most of the time I agree with that on films, you know? Like, I don't know if I agree with the opinion of like, well, the first hour's shit, but once you get to the end, you'll realise it's a great film. I'm like, no, but hang on, the first hour's still shit, you know?
I found the first half an hour really delightful.
Yes,
I thought it was
really
fun.
funny. I think ultimately it is really funny. Yeah. But I think I think I was glad to know, because I think somebody had told me, or maybe the intro at Fright Fest was kind of like, stick with it because this might not be what you think kind of thing. And I was glad to even just know that much at the beginning. Do you know what I mean?
I think a healthy dose of having an open mind helps a lot with this film. Definitely. And, you know, just being able to... I think I was... you know, I watch a lot of... I watch a lot of weird films. Like I'll watch like all the horror films that come out on like Amazon Prime and Netflix and things like that. All the new ones. I'll just put them on during the workday. Some of them are better than others.
Yeah, of course.
So when I was watching this, I was just enjoying the cheap creativity of it. You know,
100%.
Yeah.
I think this is what makes the. Like you said, the emotional impact of the end. It's funnily enough polar opposite of the emotional impact of the end of Train to Busan, in which you want to sob. This is like I want to stand on my chair and fist bump the air and cheer and clap, because there's something like your heart goes out to these people in like just all mucking in and making a movie together. And yes, the movie isn't amazing, but there's something so, again, it's satisfying. There's something amazingly satisfying about that final act and seeing everything come together and everybody come together and make this thing. It's just, I love it.
This film is a love letter to people making budget movies. Yes. Everyone's getting stuck in.
Yeah.
Everyone's passionate about it.
Yeah.
It's like I've been on like one or two like sort of like indie shoots before, and it's like everyone has to get involved.
Totally.
And some people are less enthusiastic about it than others, and like the director's always trying to like, come on everyone, I'm sorry it's late.
So right, you're so right. Yes, and even, you know, I used to at school and at uni, me and my mates used to make films all the time. Like that was how we spent our spare time. I had a video camera and we would spend our summers like, we're going to make a horror film this summer and stuff. And it was literally that kind of, you just run around the woods, we squirted blood on each other, you know, whatever. And it was always like make do with whatever we can, or come up with some silly trick where you can make it look like somebody's head's been lopped off or whatever. And it's just, there's something just so fun and joyous about that, isn't it? Just like creating something together.
It is like unbridled creativity.
Yeah,
totally.
It's so good.
And this film has the air of being completely off the cuff.
Yes.
And like it must have been so difficult to make.
Oh my god,
the organization of it.
It's amazing. Let's talk about that first half hour then. First of all, I mean, like in general, I'm a sucker for anything. Whenever I get told single take, I'm always like, ooh.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Have you ever seen the film called Victoria from a couple of years ago?
That's the one that they did like 3 shoots of it.
It's a 2.5 hour single take movie made around Berlin.
I haven't seen it.
Oh my god,
I've heard amazing things.
It's just incredible. Check it out. It really is incredible, because it's one of those films that's not just that gimmick. It's not just you watch it because of the feat of a single take. It's actually an amazing story. It's really tense. It's really action packed, and you just can't believe the feat of it, really. You just can't believe how they pull it off, because it's not a single location. They like drive from one end of Berlin to the other. There's like shootouts. There's a scene in a hotel. It moves to a nightclub. It moves to it's like huge scale, like crime movie done in one take. And it's just incredible, you know?
I really appreciate it. I really get behind it in kind of like smaller films. But I feel I can't believe I'm going on coming out with this, but I wasn't a fan of Birdman.
Yes! High five. Yeah! Did not like Birdman.
You hear that, everyone?
This is, interestingly, this is a bit of continuity between our chats, because last time we chatted, I went on a bit of a rant about Wes Anderson. And I had this exact same problem with Birdman, in that I felt like it was shouting at me, look how clever this is.
Yes. It was, and it was like, I appreciated the second I noticed this is all going to be one shot.
Yeah,
I was just I don't know why. It's like, because this film was like, I'm going to get all the awards. I was like, all right, we'll see where the fucking edits are. Okay,
it's like, it's infuriatingly smug, that film.
It really felt like it, and it's like the dialogue was coming at me so thick and fast. I was like, all right, Ed Norton, chill out.
It was that thing where it's like, we're going to be quirky and artsy, and you're going to marvel at how clever we are, when it wasn't really doing much or saying much. I actually much preferred The Revenant, the bear movie with Leonardo DiCaprio that director did next, you know?
A visceral treat.
Yeah. I'd much rather see Leonardo get attacked by a bear
by a
than
CGI bear again,
Michael Keaton wander around for 2 hours.
Meditative.
I'm right there with you. And I think there is a real fine line to it between, you know, when you make a movie that's that kind of style, like there's a tendency to all like feel like we have to appreciate it just because of that.
Yes.
Aside from the story or the characters or the heart or anything else. Yeah, so it is a really hard balance to get.
It's like that film on every single level wanted to be like expert.
Yes.
And, you know, don't get me wrong, it's a very well-made film.
Yes.
It's a very well-made film. I found it insufferable.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. I'm so glad about that. Yes, and you're right. With low budget movies, you can forgive it. It's different. And even with this movie, the kind of the sort of jerkiness, I suppose, of the camera movement, where you can literally feel a cameraman running around with a camera, didn't bother me. Even if that had been the real film we were watching, that wasn't a problem. But the weird thing about that opening half hour is the weird, like, time-filling conversations that happen that feel unprepared.
Those are great.
Or moments when suddenly the director does look at the camera and goes, don't cut. Or a cameraman wipes blood off the lens. And you're like, what is this? Is this supposed to be found footage? Is it not? Like, you feel completely like unsafe in what you're watching. You don't know what it is you're watching or what it's supposed to be, what the form is even supposed to be.
At no point did I feel like I settled into the film in that first half an hour.
You're spending the whole first 30 minutes just trying to figure out what you're watching.
Yeah.
Literally what it is you're watching.
And just because of like when Lucy watched it, she thought that this is what the whole film was going to be, and so by the time there was one person left, and we're only half an hour in, Lucy was getting really annoyed by this point. Like, what is going on? Is it going to just be the next hour? Is just going to be with this poor woman walking around?
That is so fascinating, isn't it? Like, I think it goes back to that thing that we said of like, we're so used to kind of conventional Hollywood film structures, and if you watch a film where you don't know in yourself like what the genre is or what the story is or exactly what you're in for, people get like angry, like you feel yourself getting kind of frustrated, like, hang on, well, what is this movie then? If this has already happened in 20 minutes, like, what am I watching? What is this supposed to be? You know, it's so funny.
And then all of a sudden, everyone's like an expert on how films should be made.
Yeah. It's a real interesting experiment in that way, this movie. Like, I think, like you said, sometimes it's good to warn people a little bit what you're in for. But there is something really interesting as an experiment of just showing this film to somebody blind and seeing what they make of it.
It's one of these things where it's like, the first time I watched this film, I literally loved it.
Yeah.
I was so, and I wanted to share it with the whole world.
Yeah.
And then when I had a chance to show it to Lucy the day after, and she was like,
What?
What the fuck am I watching it?
Yeah.
When was this made? In like the 80s? And
I
was going, oh no, what have I done?
I know. You've got to... Yeah, I mean, because I watched it on my own this morning before recording this again. Because again, I saw it at Fright Fest, loved it. Watched it a second time this morning. Rihanna was kind of coming in and out, and she was like, "This looks terrible." And I was like, "Look, you've got to sit through the whole thing. You've got to be on the journey to appreciate it, and you do. Like, you can't pop in and out of this movie."
So people were walking out in Fright Fest as well.
Yeah, I've heard. I don't know whether it happened in Fright Fest, but I've read tweets and I've read accounts and I've read reviews of, screenings of this where people literally are like, fuck this, this is a terrible zombie movie.
But it's so creative in that moment in any case.
Right.
It's so well done and like, because it's low budget.
Yeah.
The fact that they're doing the one take and stuff, that is really, really fun.
It's such an interesting balance, because if it had been, if it had just been framed as a found footage movie, nobody would have, I don't think, had a problem with it.
No.
But it's because it presents itself as being a conventional quote-unquote film.
Yeah.
And so it has like music suddenly, like really clunky kind of like library sound effects.
Oh, yeah.
Ones that I use in this podcast sometimes for transitions.
Sure.
It's the same sound effect.
I think it's the same one, yeah.
It's the same that goes like that.
Sorry?
And that keeps happening. And it's like, kind of cheap library music and sound effects that are added to this what looks like a found footage movie. So everything feels wrong in your head, like compared to what you know in your brain should be happening. It's just so interesting.
It is. I don't know how, because I'd love to make. I'm not going to force my friends to watch it. I'd love to get my friends to watch this film, but I just know that so many of them would go like, I'm not sitting through, like, I've sat through 15 minutes of this nonsense, no more.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you get people just to kind of go, okay, this is quaint.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying. Yeah. How do you get people just? I don't know. I haven't figured it out.
I think you've just got to know. Maybe, ultimately, I mean, this is a funny thing, really. This is really the first film I've covered in this zombie series that actually isn't a zombie film, technically. There are no real, quote-unquote, zombies in it. It is about making it. It's a purely comedy film, right? It's not really a horror film at all. It's a comedy film about making a zombie film.
Imagine if there had been a fourth act and it had turned into a zombie film all of a sudden.
Imagine. Yeah. But I do think what's a really... This is the last film of this series we're covering, and I think it's so apt in some ways because almost every week somebody has said to me, look, the thing about zombie movies is they're so cheap to make that anyone thinks they can make one. Anyone can get a bunch of their mates with a video camera in the woods and make a zombie movie. And this film is taking the piss out of that, right?
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. But also it makes you realise, well, actually, a hell of a lot of work goes into these movies, even the shitty low-budget ones,
I was involved in a friend's YouTube channel once when I was playing a character, and we would literally the whole thing was about 2 minutes long, but we were doing it all day. The amount of time and effort that goes into making especially small budget stuff where my friend was the director, the cameraman, or the editor as well, and he did all of it, and we were just there waiting for him to set up and stuff. And it takes so much effort and dedication. And it's I've always got I don't there's so many of these bloody zombie films and stuff like that, but I think I do quite like low-budget sci-fi and horror films because people really like to gravitate towards that sort of stuff when they're making small-budget movies. And you know what? You always get a lot of passion out of them. Some totally. Less passion. You can tell when somebody is, I don't know, they're doing it for maybe not the right reasons. But when somebody makes not a perfect horror film, but that they really, really want to do something great,
they put their heart and soul into it.
The first Evil Dead, for instance, shoestring budget. Poor, some of the poor actors must have
oh my God,
really been put through the ringer there.
They really suffered.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but I don't think any of them regret that.
And it's so interesting. I think this does happen a lot, and we've talked about this. I've talked about this with filmmakers and all sorts. Why is it that so many indie filmmakers do go for genre? They don't make a drama necessarily, and I'm sure that does happen a lot. But I think there are a few reasons for that. I'm sure first of all, it's easier to kind of put your film in a box and enter it into festivals. If it's a genre or something that people can kind of grasp. But also I think there is this element of people like us, horror fans will usually support a horror film no matter how good or bad or high budget or low budget. One Cut of the Dead, I know it had been hyped quite a lot, but it sold out of 3 screenings at Fright Fest, sold out at One Cut of the Dead. People just got behind it and got behind it, and that happens so much at festivals like Fright Fest and various others that it doesn't have to have a big name in it. It doesn't have to have a director behind it that anyone knows. It's just oh, brilliant, a zombie film. I like zombie films, therefore I will go and watch it and support it.
That's one of the other things great things about horror films in general is that you don't need a big name.
No. It doesn't. It's so different to all other genres in that respect. Is that it doesn't really make a difference. Yes, if there's a new Ari Aster or Jordan Peele film, that is gonna help, of course. But equally, if I'd seen the trailer for Midsummer and I had no idea who was involved in it, I'd still be dead excited.
No, that's completely. Yeah, it could be a completely different director, but the sort of the visuals in it just look so strong already. It's fuck it.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, that's kind of unique about that genre, and again, I think that's why maybe people like us get an extra. There is just something extra satisfaction about One Cut of the Dead and watching these characters make a movie. It's just
when it gets to the other acts and you sort of realise what's going on, and then all of a sudden it's just this wonderfully. It's almost like Best in Show. It's like this wonderfully quaint, lovely little comedy about these kind of these really interesting characters just trying to get something done, and it's
It's so
love with all of
heartwarming.
them.
Yeah, you're in love with all of them. Do you
Yeah.
know who I love? And I know a few people, the complaint that a few people have, I know Brad had this at Fright Fest, is that it kind of sags in the middle where you have to establish, okay, now we're in the real world, quote unquote, and now we're a bit more conventional, and we're showing, rehearsals and boardroom meetings and how this film came to be. But I love the little lady who's like the TV exec who runs the zombie channel.
She's great.
Oh my god! And again, as somebody who has worked in television for years, I love it. Does have a kind of slight satirizing, poking fun at the TV industry. The way that they keep going, this isn't art, this is just a TV show. Like the things are not the one and the same, and that this guy, bless him, this is why our heart goes out to him, because he's still trying to make a piece of art to be proud of, even with all of the problems that he has. Those TV people couldn't give a fuck. They don't even know how much work went into it, and they're like, yeah, it was great, it worked. They don't care. They don't need it to be artistic in any way.
One of my I really, really identified with the director in it, the main guy.
Yes.
Because I do like work in like sort of like the corporate world and things like that as well.
Yeah.
And I know the difference between putting passion into something and the difference between just like a job.
Exactly.
But sometimes that line can get blurred.
It can.
And all of a sudden you'll do a job for like a corporate client and you think, okay, I'm just going to sort of do like pretty by the numbers.
Yes.
Don't need to recreate the will.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden like the producer starts to get a bit excited about an idea and you start going, oh fuck, this could
is
be my opus.
This is my Citizen Kane.
yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. And it is this. There is a thing. I think it must come with TV more than. Well, I'm sure it happens in film too. But as a director or producer or somebody who's making content, there's a feeling of like it just being a day job with TV more, because it's a little bit more Monday to Friday than maybe if you're directing your own feature film or whatever. And there is this like there's that difference. There's those two worlds combining in this middle section of
Definitely,
like boardroom execs going, we don't care. We hired you because you're cheap and fast and average.
God.
It's so funny. It's so funny. But I love that lady. She's so happy the whole way through.
I know,
she's so brilliantly
like,
happy.
And it's like she misses the bits where it goes wrong because she's on her
She's
phone.
on her phone. It's so right. I've been in live television broadcasts in the gallery where something happened and you think, oh fucking hell. And then I look to my exec producer on the left and he's just on his phone or he's checking his emails, and at the end he'll go, yeah, very good, glad it all went smoothly. And you think, oh, okay, there you go.
Getting up and sees like a shitstorm on Twitter the day after. Like, what the fuck
Exactly,
happened?
luckily, don't show them Twitter, it's fine. But yeah, all of that rang so true as well. And
Yeah,
I think ultimately, even though it is this like weird, absurd film, all of the elements kind of feel quite real, don't they, and relatable.
They do, and like even the again, it's like you get these characters that could be kind of two-dimensional,
Yes.
and there's something like like the sort of the pompous actor that wants this to be like big for him, but like he kind of gets stuck in at the end.
Yes.
One of my favorite sort of side characters was the guy that was really funny about his water, and he was like, I did send an email about this, and then it's like paid off because all of a sudden it's like, oh fucking hell, he wasn't joking. He really needed that special water.
Oh my
Bloody
god,
hell.
it's just amazing. I loved that. I love that whole sequence. My favourite character is the director's wife. I just think she's just every moment she's on screen, from when we're first introduced to her and she's watching the martial arts video and you're introduced to Pom and just again the way that pays off throughout the film. I love it, and I love that they're all so worried about her acting, and it's like, why is everyone so nervous about her being in this film? Is she that bad? And no, she's just that good that she goes full method, and they're like, yeah, she broke somebody's arm and stuff. It's so good. And she turns it when she's like, her face is covered in blood at the end, and she looks like this proper just kind of psychopath.
I am calm.
And you see behind the scenes her like, kick her husband, and she's like really goes for it. It's so funny.
Yeah, I guess we're kind of in like third act territory here now.
Yeah.
This is like set up payoff the movie. Just
Right.
seeing everything in one context and then seeing it in a completely separate context. I mean, I've watched this film like 2.5 times now. I tried to watch it again, but I ran out of time.
Yeah.
The first bit is all of a sudden so different.
Yes.
Again,
Yes.
when you watch it again,
Yes.
it's brilliant to watch that all over again. And you
Yes.
pick up all of these new things.
Yes.
It is so fucking so satisfying.
It's
this film.
so satisfying. It's where we keep using with both these movies, but it really is the like you said, it's set up and pay off the movie. That is
Yeah.
exactly what
Yeah.
it is. Every moment that you kind of you go, what? In the first half hour, you go, oh,
I see.
And I just love that. I love that about it. You know, again, yeah, moments like where there's weird stilted conversations and you realise they're filling time because of the drunk guy outside and why the drunk guy is... My favourite bit is when the director is literally holding the drunk guy's legs down below and making him move like a zombie, and he throws up on that guy's face. Because again, when you watch it in the first half, in the context of this zombie movie, you're like, why is he throwing up like white foamy stuff onto this guy? That's like...
Oh, it's like the 28 Days Later zombies where they like vomit up on them. And
it's so good. I love that about it as well.
the best gag for me was the when near the end when the heroine is hiding in like a little like hut,
Yes.
and then all of a sudden these legs come up to her.
Yes.
And then they go
Oh
back.
my
And when
God.
you see that in a different context, that I was in tears.
Me too.
At that.
And he's just got his little bare legs out and he's holding that sign saying find the axe.
He's so gormless looking. He's just like, oh.
I'd love to know, actually. I mean, I'm assuming... I just want to know how this film was made, you know? How this whole thing was made, because presumably they had to do the whole one take and then they had to do it again in the context of the third half. Like, surely it wasn't actually all done simultaneously, was it? Or was it? Because, like, there would have been a... So there's... This is the thing that's... Because at the end, during the end credits, we get another view, don't
Yes.
we? We get this kind of outtake kind of thing through the closing credits of another guy filming. So you've got one guy filming another guy filming another guy filming the action, and it's unbelievable. It really is Inception. But
It's amazing, yeah.
I wonder whether they did genuinely do it all in one go, kind of the on-camera and off-camera stuff, or whether they had to do it separately.
I think the first act and the third act were two separate
Right.
films, because I think you would have seen in the first act.
Yeah, you'd have had to have seen other crew members at points,
yeah.
wouldn't you?
Oh God, my head.
Would you? I know it makes my brain hurt thinking about it. It's just so clever. And again, it's like, I don't know what else we can say about the third act other than listing all of our favourite moments. But it's literally every minute it hits you with another payoff.
That is key in a film like this. Is that it has got to be every single, like, to make that first half an hour worth it.
Yes.
The last act had to be like chock a fucking block. And it was like literally every single moment there was a moment like that, and this happened because of this, and that because of that. Oh God, the last crane shot at the end.
It's like the pièce de résistance, that the final shot and the crane. It's just perfect. Again, it's just perfect because it is literally this team of misfits banding together to create this crane shot. It summarizes the whole film in some ways, that crane shot, you know?
It's that lovely little, there's that sort of like little subplot with the dad and his daughter.
Yes.
Where there's that picture of her sitting on his shoulders, and then at the end, she sits on his shoulders, and it like comes around full circle.
It's so brilliant. And it is literally people supporting people, you know? And
everyone gets mucked in. It's so good.
It's so good. And it's so funny seeing all those people in zombie makeup all along the bottom. They put the alcoholic man at the bottom, which made me laugh as well. And the fact that they have to hold the shot for like 2 minutes through the credits.
Of course, yeah. They're
It's
really
so
struggling.
good. It's so good. Everything about it is just so funny. And we've had Jen Handorf on the podcast a bunch of times, who is a film producer, and she's talked so much about shit goes wrong and you just have to deal with it. That's indie filmmaking again, isn't it? And somebody gets the shit, somebody has a car accident, somebody gets ill, somebody gets drunk and passes out, and it's like, shit, what are we gonna do? We have to roll with it.
Yeah.
And again, I've made live television before as well, and it's exactly that. I once had, I'm not going to name names, but I used to...
They'll know who they are.
They'll know who they are. They'll know who they are. I used to produce the BBC film show, and it was live at like 11 o'clock at night, and there was the kind of people talking on a sofa about films, and then every now and then we'd cut to these VTs, which are the things that I would make, which are like the kind of, the little features we did with interviews and clips and stuff. And one of the contributors on the show had had a very bad stomach, basically, and basically absolutely was such a trooper. And he did the whole show. He did all of the live chats, but you could see kind of beads of sweat dripping down his face. And every time we cut to a VT, he was like, how many minutes is this? And we'd be like, this is a 6-minute VT. And he would run to the toilet.
Oh, no.
Basically have explosive diarrhea and then run back and then be back live on BBC One by the time the little insert had ended. And he would just carry on talking about the film like nothing had ever happened.
Well,
and it was like amazing. And that is what reminds me of One Cut of the Dead a bit. That kind of like, as long as it goes on air, the show must go on. We'll do what we can, kind of thing.
You look a little ropey there, but you're still on screen. You're doing your thing. That's not an embarrassing story to me. That's heroic.
It's heroic. It's heroic. He probably wouldn't mind me mentioning his name, but I won't, just in case. I think he himself has tweeted about it. But yeah, it's a brilliant story, and things like that. Of course, they do happen. People work in theatre shows every day. All of this stuff must happen all the time, and it's this brilliant mix of like the perils of indie filmmaking and the perils of live television broadcasts as well. It's such a great mix.
It must be so stressful.
Yeah, it's just brilliant. It's such a good film. And the other thing I love about it is that I feel like it can never happen again. It can't have a sequel. It can't be.
No. Aren't they doing?
Oh no! You're going to tell me they're doing a sequel.
I can't remember if somebody mentioned this on the Facebook group.
Are they remaking it?
Don't take my word for it, but I feel like...
Let me have a quick look.
Oh, God.
Well,
I can see
them. I can see them remaking it, but I guess they couldn't ever do a sequel or turn it into a franchise.
No.
Yeah,
that gag would run dry pretty quickly.
Yeah, it would. And I love that it's just this perfect, unique thing that almost can never exist again,
And it's almost like... it's like the first time... like the Blair Witch Project came out.
Exactly.
It was like
that.
It felt so. I'm sure a film has been done like this.
Yes.
In a sense, years ago, never got like the recognition or whatever, and probably wasn't done as well.
Yeah.
But this is like
Oh, I love it. I'm a sucker for movies about movie making as well. I've got a real weak spot. Have you seen? This is my like guilty pleasure. Bowfinger from the 1990s, starring Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy.
Love it.
Oh, what a film!
So great.
And again, it's a silly film. Of course, it's got stupid moments, but I love it so much. And again, it's that same like heartwarming feeling of these people. Not great at what they do, but they kind of rally together and make this terrible film called Chubby Rain about aliens invading.
Chubby Rain.
And it's so good. I find there's something so satisfying about watching it get made. Yeah, it's delightful.
Also, is that Eddie Murphy's last good film?
I think that's right. I think that's right. And I don't think a lot of people would argue that it is a good film. I think some people would argue before that.
Wrong.
They are wrong. It's brilliant.
It's great. It's so much fun.
Yes, I've just Googled it on Variety here. There's an article from 20th of March 2019. Japanese sleeper hit One Cut of the Dead heads for English remake. Patrick Cunningham, a Japan-based American producer whose credits include Marcy May Marlene, which is an incredible film, is behind the venture. But yes, it is getting an English remake.
When you say English, is that like
American?
Britain? Okay.
I think English language remake. Yeah,
I'll be there.
Yeah, we'll still be there. Let's be honest.
I'm going to see what they do with it now.
We'll still be there. I guess I was wrong. Nothing is completely unique. But again, it's like you say, it may have been done in some shape or form in the past, but it felt the joy about this movie is like I've never seen this before.
Yeah, I was like giddy.
Yeah,
after watching this.
Yeah. And again, it's it's a great way to round off this zombie series. The idea of launching a zombie channel. Again, it feels like the most perfect kind of comment on this like absolute influx of zombie content that we've had this last 10 years as well. Yeah. It's like cynical TV producers are like, what more could we do? Let's do a whole channel of just zombie stuff, which you could actually have because there's that much zombie out there.
We don't want to spend much on it though.
Yeah, we don't want to spend any money. We all know zombies are cheap, easy, average, and they rake in the audiences. Exactly. So there you go. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's it's got a lot to say. I think this film.
If people can continue creating, this is what you can do with zombies. Is you can be if the zombie genre is only as good as the creatives behind it.
100%.
They are like they really are a blank slate in terms of they're not like a vampire or you're kind of stuck to some sort of key things there. You can do so much with zombies. You can really, really do a lot. And it's like looking at Train to Busan as well. It's like, okay, where else can we stick people?
Yes,
You know?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And how can we form, zombies? Yeah, what you can still in some ways make it any genre you want. You can have comedy, you can have action, you can have disaster movie, you can have horror movie, you can have whatever. It's like anything works with zombies. So you're right. I think all it takes is some creative minds and some original ideas.
I don't think we've had sci-fi zombies yet. Have we?
No, I mean, would you class The Girl with All the Gifts has a kind of like
It is quite sci-fi.
Day of the Triffids-esque kind of vibe to it in the second half, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But not like in space or anything, if that's
No.
what you mean. We haven't. No, I suppose we haven't. Do we have any space zombies? I'm sure we must have at some
I want
point.
zombies in the vacuum of space.
Yeah.
Getting into they're in the hard drives.
Yes, exactly.
Ship.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm trying to think. There must be.
there has to be.
Somebody will comment now and let us know. But I'm sure there will be zombies in space that exist somewhere out there.
There's been a zombie period. Joe, I can't remember those books.
Pride and Prejudice and zombies. Yeah.
That was a
Terrible.
strange period of time.
That was a low point. Yeah, that was a low point. Oh, this has been so much fun.
It's been great.
Thank you so much for joining me. Before we go, I've got to ask you, what is your favourite ever zombie film?
I think it's got to be Wreck.
Oh, yeah.
I think if I had to, because again, like when I was talking about Resident Evil and enjoying the kind of escalation of things, going through these like shuffly zombies to extra violent zombies, and then at the very end, the last like 10 minutes, just what the fuck is that?
Yeah, I know, it's true. Nothing compares. I mean, if you just want pure horror, nothing compares to Wreck as a zombie, like in terms of the zombie subgenre, I think, and the
really
last
was.
10 minutes, yeah.
Not like that. That affected me so much in the cinema. Honestly, I was like, it's the first time I thought, I think I might actually have to leave. I think I might have to go. This might be too much. Yeah. Very unsafe.
Amazing, Mike. Thank you so much. Where can people find you out there if they want to come find you, your artwork, stuff you've done? Like, where's best to find you?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram. That's probably the best place to find me. Both handles are the same. It's simply at Mike Lee Graham with no spaces or hyphens or anything.
Amazing. And, keep supporting me and Mike by buying Evolution of Horror t-shirts, They
look great. You'll feel great in them.
There's a handful left, and, we've got mouths to feed. Well, we've not got kids, but we've got our own mouths to feed. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
And that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening, and a big thank you to my guest, Mike Lee Graham. Such a pleasure to finally have him on the podcast. Now, if you subscribe to our Patreon page, there's actually a whole bunch of other episodes that Mike has joined me for. We discussed A Clockwork Orange together a couple of months ago when that movie got re-released. We also discussed Piercing together, and he is about to join me for a mammoth Child's Play retrospective extravaganza. Me and Mike went to see the brand new Child's Play, the one with Mark Hamill, and we rewatched all 7 of the original Chucky movies. So, if you are a Patreon subscriber, you will soon have access to bonus episodes in which we discuss every single movie in the Child's Play franchise in depth. So if you want more Mike Lee Graham, sign up now. Patreon.com/evolution of horror. So, what do you think of these 2 movies? What do you think of One Cut of the Dead and Train to Busan? Did you enjoy these 2 as much as Mike and I did? Please do send us your feedback and let us know your thoughts. The email address is evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Letterboxd. And if you want to discuss this week's episode, if you want to discuss horror movies, zombie movies, whatever you like, anything horror related with fellow listeners, please do come and join the discussion group. That's called the Evolution of Horror Discussion Group, and that can be found on Facebook. You can find all previous episodes and seasons of this podcast on our website. Simply go to evolutionofhorror.com. That's where you can also find information and links about all of our various guests that we've had on the show, and lots of written pieces in our blog section. And if you want to get involved, if you want to write something yourself for our website, for the blog, please do drop me a line. Again, email me evolutionofhorror@gmail.com with any ideas or any examples of your writing, and I will gladly publish them on the website. You can find this podcast on all major podcast platforms, including iTunes, Podbean, Acast, Libsyn, and various others. If you get a chance, please do subscribe to us. Please do spread the word about us, especially as we're heading into a little break from new episodes. It's really nice to keep the word of the podcast alive, help us get discovered by new listeners. So that's it. We've got one episode left for you as ever. Next week, I am going to be bringing you our conclusion. We're going to look back at everything we've learned across the last 22 weeks on the evolution of the zombie movie. I'm going to be reading listener feedback. I'm going to be counting down my and the listeners' top 10 zombie movies of all time. And I'm going to be joined by London movie quizmaster Brian Ryan, who is going to be giving me the ultimate zombie quiz. Oh shit. Join us next week for all of this and more on the evolution of horror.